Hey monkeys, how you doing? Damian Keyes here. So today I want to talk about PR stunts, getting yourself noticed. And I want to look back at the last 20 years of being in business and come up with my favorite PR stunts that I've been involved in to get noticed in the public eye. Number 10, breaking world records or attempting to break world records. Now, back in the day when we set up BIM, we wanted to get noticed. We wanted to do something spectacular. So we came up with the idea of becoming a world record breaker. And the way we were going to do it is by having the most amount of guitar pedals in one sound. So what we did was we got all of the students to bring in their guitar pedals, we got loads of little patch leads, and we connected them all up. And the idea was to make it sound as crazy as possible. And obviously every single guitar pedal that got added was a bit of deterioration. So they sent a guy down from Guinness, who are the creators of Guinness World Records, and he was an adjudicator. We got Ace from Skunk Anansie. We had a massive big guitar stack. We got the press down, and we basically started hooking up these guitar pedals and playing the riff from Iron Man. And the adjudicator had to basically decide on whether it was audible, and we kept going. 70 pedals, 75 pedals, 80 pedals. And in the end, we didn't break the world record, but I tell you what, we got a hell of a lot of press out of it. We got a lot of people talking, and it was a really, really fun thing to do. Number 9, freezing a guitar in a block of ice. So many years ago, whilst I was at ACM, we used to do exhibitions, and that was for anyone music education and music equipment based to come down and do an exhibition. So thousands and thousands of musicians would descend on the Wembley Conference Centre or the Birmingham Conference Centre, and we'd have a little stall and musicians would walk past and we'd talk to them about music education. The thing is, they're all there looking at all the new guitars and all the new gear and being very, very excited. And so we wanted to actually be able to stop them in our tracks. And the way we did that was we took a Fender Strat and we froze it in a 6-foot block of ice, and we left it at the front of our shop. So every time someone walked past, they'd see it, they'd automatically stop, and they'd automatically reach out to see if it was real. And as soon as they put their hand on the block of ice, they'd look completely shocked that we'd frozen a block of ice around a Fender. And over the 3 days, that Fender stood there, and we talked to thousands of musicians as they came past, because everybody wanted to talk about that frozen block of ice in a guitar. It probably cost us 500 quid just to get a Strat and stick it in a block of ice and to get it transported there, but it was worth it because we got to thousands of musicians and we got the name out to musicians who are talking about education. Number 8, masterclasses. Now, social proofing is a big, big way of getting people to buy in and build trust around what you do. And masterclasses are very, very simple. What we used to do at ACM and BIM and DK Management, DK Music Academy, is we would get endorsements. We would get celebrities or music industry guests to come down and say, this is who we are, this is what we do, and we'd do meet and greets. And if they were big artists, they'd just come in and they'd sign our wall and they'd meet and greet, or sometimes they'd come in and they'd do masterclasses with playing. Sometimes they would just talk, whatever they felt comfortable with. But it was a really, really simple way to then get to the press. It was a simple way to say, this guitarist has come down, we can now approach Guitarist magazine. This singer-songwriter has come down, we can now approach NME. Because it's a story, and that's what this is all about, creating stories. And famous people create stories. So if you've got someone that you know that you can piggyback on in some way, creativity wins the day. You need to get them involved in your project. Number 7, the bass initiative. Now, I'm a bass player, and there's just not many bass players in the world. There's millions of guitarists, loads of singers, loads of drummers, but there aren't many bass players, which is a real shame for someone like me who's so passionate about bass playing. And I want to raise awareness of bass playing, and I want to get more bass players out there. So what I did was I came up with the bass initiative, where I bought a bunch of very cheap basses to be able to give away to start the market itself, because I know that the more people who are playing bass, the more they'll get into it, the more they get hooked and get passion for it and want to buy better basses. So then I hooked up with local newspapers, I went to local radio, and I said, we have a problem, which is there aren't enough bass players. And if we don't have enough bass players, we will not have a music industry long term. They all panicked. We all had a chat about it, and I said, don't worry, I've got a plan. I'm going to make my own bass players. I bought the guitars, we gave them away in competitions, and all of a sudden we raised a lot of press around bass playing. We got a load of bass players, famous bass players involved, and backed the cause, and it was a really, really great way of actually PRing bass playing, but also the people behind it. Number 6, finders keepers. Now, a few years ago, I bought a guitar shop. Weird thing to do, but it had a school underneath it, and that's my passion, music education. So I have a little music school called DK Music Academy, which is in Godalming, and it's now growing, and it's going to take over the world, hopefully. But when we started it, I wanted to actually get more awareness in the local community of where it's based. So what I did was I took a few guitars, and I hid them strategically around the city with a little note on it, which says, finders keepers, this is now yours, but on the condition that you treat it with love and you learn to play it. And I did this with 3 or 4 guitars, hid it around the town, and then I approached the local radio station and I said, there's £1,000 worth of guitars. It wasn't £1,000 probably, but there's £1,000 worth of guitars which are hidden around the town. I gave them a couple of clues and I just said, they're there. If you find them, they're yours. They've got a note on it. This is a way that you can actually play guitar, learn, or get your own guitar. And the radio station picked up on it. They loved the idea of it because it was a community-based thing. People got something out of it. It was free, it was a story, and it was fun. It probably cost me a couple of £100 to buy a couple of guitars, trade to do that, or secondhand. But it was a really good story that both the papers and the radio stations could pick up on. Number 5, scholarships. Now, influencer marketing is the new buzzword that we have at the moment. Everything's influencer marketing, but this is not new. This has been going around since the dawn of time. Influencer marketing is just obvious. We buy from people that we trust, and we trust people who are experts and famous people. That's just the way it works. So what we did at BIM and at ACM was we got friends who were in the industry that were very, very trusted, and we gave them a scholarship to give away. So it said, this is the Ronan Keating Scholarship. This is the Skunk and Nancy Scholarship. This is the Bullet for My Valentine Scholarship. Now, they didn't pay anything. They just put their name to it, and we paid for it. We just said, look, we'll sort it out. But what we did was we actually had a partnership where people would say, oh, I love that band. And the only stipulation was, the person who won the competition became a student, they got a free course, but they would have to meet the band. They would have to meet their idol, because that was a big part of it, was the excitement to say, wow, this band has put us through college. But because of that, we were able to get in Kerrang magazine, NME, Q magazine, all of the local papers. So it didn't cost us much because it was a free course, so we were giving away a space. So technically, I suppose it did cost us anything, but there was no initial money outlay. But what it did was it allowed us to get thousands and thousands of pounds worth of PR in magazines and on radio and even TV a couple of times, purely on the basis of other people's names. Number 4, a punch to the face. Now, I used to have a show on a local radio station where we used to play unsigned bands, and it grew quite well because loads of unsigned bands used to send us their demos, and it got to the point where they'd send us from all over the world, and I always wanted to promote it and make it as big as possible, even though it was kind of a local thing. And I loved doing it, and we won an award from it, which was brilliant. But in the beginning, we had to get people to listen to it, and I was constantly telling bands who didn't have much of a story because they were unsigned and relatively new, that if they were going to come and do an interview on the show, they had to have something to talk about. So we'd always come up with new angles. But the best one we ever came up with was we brought a band on, we planned it beforehand, and the bass player was going to punch the singer full on in the face. Now, the reason why this was funny is because you can't see it. All you could do is hear it. So we'd have this guy's going to get punched in the face, full on punched in the face. People are thinking, what is going on? Then you just hear the sound of someone getting punched in the face, and then you'd hear laughter from all of us as we burst out laughing, and then we'd have to find out if he was still alive. And whilst we don't condone violence, this was probably the most popular thing we ever did. We probably had 200 messages within the next 20 minutes from people who were texting their mates saying, you've got to check this out, you've got to tune in, you've got to go and listen to this. And as more people listened and more people texted the show, some people were absolutely outraged because it was violent. Some people thought it was hilariously funny and it was kind of like a Jackass sketch. But one thing it did was, for that night, it broke all of our records with the amount of engagement that we had and the amount of listenership that we had. And the next day, straight away, I was brought into the guy who who owns the radio station. He said, what did you do last night? We literally peaked for about 35, 40 minutes. And I said to him, we punched someone in the face. Needless to say, he didn't want to do that again, but it worked. Number 3, awards. Now, it's quite a tried and tested thing. It's been done a million times before. And to be honest with you, I actually hate awards and award ceremonies. But looking back, I have to admit they probably have done more good than harm. And we've won business awards at BIM. I won an award for the radio show. And it is quite nice to say that you've won an award. And the way those things work are very simple. You just put yourself up for an award and they tell you whether you've won or not. They invite you down to these places and you sit there and you pay for a meal, you pay for a table, and they do this kind of like, and the winner is, and then you get to walk on stage and they give you some trophy, which means fuck all. But when you do get to say award winning, people do tend to, their ears tend to prick up and they do tend to go, oh, tell me more, you won an award. Like when we won an award from the radio show that we did, people used to say, oh, that's pretty cool. How did that happen? And then it's a story to be able to tell. So, and when you do get an award, it is a way to be able to then go back to the papers, the local papers. It is something you put on your website. It's something you can make content about. It is something you can make blogs about. So awards, a bit of an obvious one, and something that I'm not a massive fan of going to award ceremonies, unless you want to give me an award for my social media, and then I'll be there straight away. But on the whole, it does actually work. Number 2, the music industry football competition. Now, at BIM, we all loved playing football. We were absolutely terrible at it, but we put together our own 5-a-side football team just in Brighton to get together on a Tuesday night and play football. And I'd love to say we got really good, but we didn't. But then every year, they have the music industry 5-a-side competition where loads of companies from record labels through to bands, they all get together and they have a competition. Now, we were awful, and I think we lost every single match, but you better believe the networking that happened in between the matches and at the end of the day when we all went to the pub for a drink was massive, and we got so much out of it, and it probably cost us a couple of £100 to register our football team. And like I said, we didn't win, we were rubbish, but you know, my personal claim to fame is I totally dispatched Brian from Westlife. Yeah. And it was an amazing thing to do, and it was a fun day. We got loads of pictures out of it, really good for social media. It didn't cost us much money, but we met some amazing people. And then the next batch of guests who came down to BIM were from that football competition where we'd met people and said, you have to come down, you have to come and talk about your journey, you have to come and talk about what it is you do and impart your knowledge into what we do with our students. And we made some friends for life just with one simple footballing competition. And number 1, the world record success. And yeah, we'd already had a world record failure, but we had a Guinness World Record. So I am actually a Guinness Book of World Record holder. Whoop, whoop. And that was when we were at BIM, we set up the loudest guitar in the world. We teamed up with the band Gallows, and this was in a very soundproof place, but we set up loads and loads of amps with a friend of ours from Cornford Guitar Amps, and we made the loudest guitar amp in the history of the world. And it probably killed a few people, but it was amazing. And from then on, we had so much press. We're all, I mean, even now it's like 15 years later, and I can still say, oh yeah, I broke a Guinness World Record. It's always a talking point. It's always something that people are interested in, and it will never go away, even if the week after someone goes and breaks it or takes it back off you again. For that moment, you can say we were literally the best in the world. So that's my memory lane top 10 PR stunts, and those are just a bunch of examples from some of the different businesses that I've been involved in. Obviously very music industry related, but hopefully it crosses from music industry into business. But I want you to have a think about PR stunts and things that you can do just to get attention, because that's what this is about. That's what social media is about. That's what creativity is about. This is about you doing something that gets above the noise, that puts your head above the parapet and says, this is us, this is what we do, this is what we stand for, this is who we are, who wants to come with us on our journey. And from that point, people seeing you and saying, that is the company I want to follow. That's the band that I want to go and see live. So I want you to think about what you can do that's just a little bit different from the norm, that's going to set you up so that you can actually start to get into magazines, into papers, into radio stations, even on TV, from creative ideas that you have come up with. Now, if you like this video, I would really appreciate it if you'd like it, if you'd share it. It'd be amazing if you'd subscribe to the Facebook, especially subscribe to the YouTube, because that's my biggest thing in life, is to become a YouTube star, and then I'll be able to meet I don't know, PewDiePie, even though he lives down the road, and my life will be complete. So thanks very much, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.